Next order of business is roll call members. Please indicate your presence when the machine is open. If all the members voted, Tyler, roll.
Welcome to show 5 of Sessions. I know some of you are surprised we're still alive and doing this show, but yes, we are, and we're not giving up until we have to. I had a little bit of fun with that. I think everyone gets my little joke there. Yeah. We are joined today by Phil GiaQuinta, and I actually just learned 5 minutes ago your middle name was Kelly. He is the state representative for House District 88 in Fort Wayne. He also serves as the leader of the House Democrats. So we're going to talk to him about what that means and I guess which one of us is a bigger pain for him during the session as we go through this process. But we're gonna start off by talking about some of the good things, or one of the good things that we are actually doing as a state house to give back. And you may notice, or maybe you don't notice on our shot, you two are actually wearing gym shoes. I'm not, but it doesn't mean I didn't participate. So, Mr. Leader, tell us about the gym shoes.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. I was on last year, so I made it back. I'm not sure what that means.
You did,
but
you did.
Were you one of the top 16 shows?
He was one of the top 16. He was one of the top 16.
Oh wait, there were only 16.
Yeah, but he was one of the top 16 without a doubt.
No, it's awesome. Glad to be here. I love the new format. So this is great. You mentioned the fact that I'm a leader, and I love having you two on my leadership team. Very helpful in so many ways. And you also mentioned yes, you're both pains from time to time, but that sort of rotates too. So it's just not you all. So don't worry about that. And yes, Kelly is my.
Can you give us a list of everyone?
In order.
In order.
Descending order.
Yeah, there's 29.
Every year we've been doing this for a number of years now with regards to having a charity which the House adopts every year. And this year the Speaker came up with the idea of either folks donating money or donating old gym shoes for, and I'm going to draw a blank on the name of the organization here, but it's going to go.
Samaritan's Feet?
Yes, that sounds right. Just go to for kids that can't afford or can't get shoes. So I think it's a neat idea. He mentioned, I think was it Ron Hunter, the former coach,
IUPUI
that started this, and I believe part of it is when we watch the college basketball games, the coaches that wear gym shoes. That's kind of the same thing, the same idea there with donating your gym shoes to this great cause. So. We did. I don't know if you did or not. You said you did, so that's good.
I did.
But we took advantage. So at least one day out of session, we get to take off the dress shoes and put on the gym
Except
shoes.
for Earl, who can't just find a way to dress down one time and had to wear dress shoes.
He got rid of his
still.
tie. Let's give him a break.
No,
I'm trying to keep my image up.
We talked about it. Sometimes you can shame people into doing things, and for us, it was getting you to finally do one button down and get rid of the tie.
I wanted two now.
I think it's important to note that we're getting to a point in session where we're getting tired. I think it's normal to start getting tired, but we're a little more tired today because it was a late night. Mr. Leader, what happened last night that kept us all up?
And before you answer that, I have to say this is probably the biggest win you will have this session.
I'm still asking myself what happened last night. I'm not really sure what those acts were, but the Mental Health Association puts on an event every year. It's a fundraiser, and so it used to be individual acts from members or staff. We've got our former champion here, Representative Harris. A couple years ago, won maybe pre-pandemic, maybe back.
It was 17.
17, yeah. Did a great. You brought the house. I mean, that's probably the last time I've actually seen a standing ovation for an act was yours. And then we
not just because they were all getting ready to leave. Because that was part of it.
They were. This show is fun. I didn't realize.
Don't tell some of the bad stuff.
But it's switched now to caucus competition. So each caucus submits. An act, if you will, and for the second year, for the second year in a row, the House Democrats took home the trophy. So
not only the second year in a row, the first time in history for a repeat win for a caucus.
Hamilton last year, which was really great. Representative Victoria Garcia Wilburn and Representative Kyle Miller. And then this year, what do I call it? Ken?
It was from the Barbie, the song.
Barbie,
Ken's
Barbie
song from
yeah.
Barbie. Yeah.
Which I've not seen, but I had the movie. But Representative Miller was awesome, and so were all the little Barbies. I'm not sure what Mitch Gore was doing the whole time, but
so the thing is, there's multiple Kens the same way there are multiple kinds of Barbie, right? And so Mitch was another Ken, right? And
okay.
Did he know that?
Yeah, he did. And so the whole thing was like, one of the other Kens grabs the mic to end the song. I think it was brilliant. I watched the movie. You should check out the movie. Very good movie. I
haven't seen the movie, so.
I think it's important to note that, so like you mentioned, all the caucuses participate. But what ends up happening is you really just kind of see the culture of our caucus versus the culture of the other caucuses, which is we prepare, we work hard,
right.
We're ready to put our best foot forward, and then you see the supermajority kind of phone the whole thing in, which is consistent with the way they operate. And then unfortunately you see that the Senate Ds, I don't know what they did, but it was not competitive enough to be included. And I tell you, folks, you can't see the videos of this, which is unfortunate. But we didn't just win; like we won by hundreds of votes. It was
everybody logs on their phone and votes. Now I have the opportunity to be a judge.
You do,
and of course I take it. Very seriously.
You do.
And give some pretty, I think, constructive
criticism.
Listen, I don't know what you
we're not
think.
supposed to laugh at that.
No, this is the thing. Folks listening, Phil, Phil's a serious guy a lot of the time. He's got a wicked sense of humor, and when he is judging that show, he's the best part of that entire judge's table.
I mean,
it's
I think it's a
incredible.
responsibility of every judge to, give constructive criticism. And,
Amen.
And Phil,
Amen.
I might have been a little mean here.
Even made fun of the victorious team, his people. Still made fun of
that was odd. I'm not sure.
Listen, I think you got to stick. That's the greatest. I want you to start incorporating that approach to your floor speeches.
Well,
okay.
Yes. I'm going to go back to the earlier comment about the pains in the butt. So that was a little bit of you getting some revenge on the pains in the butt.
Yeah,
you can say that.
It's okay.
Yeah, you could say that.
I mean, no one's watching the podcast, right?
That's right. So another thing happening right now in session is because we are at the end of terms too, right? So people are up for re-election. You start to see retirements happen, and something that's kind of interesting that happens is if you choose to retire, you get your moment of a celebration of recognition on the House floor. A special resolution is drafted, and then folks say nice things about you. What else should people know about what that process looks like?
Yeah, I mean, it's it's funny because you'll start to see the retirement announcements as early as last summer. Some decide rather late in the year, but then the retirement, as you mentioned, the retirement process starts where we draft a resolution, and in the resolution we'll talk about what the member has done over the course of their career. We submit and the resolution onto the floor, and we pay tribute to those retiring members, and it's a lot of fun, especially those. We have some members now that are retiring that maybe have only been here 6-8 years, and they certainly don't have the experience and the war stories of some that have been here even longer. So today, Representative Cherry, his resolution, his tribute was to Representative Tor will be very interesting on Monday as well. But it's fun to sort of hear them talk about their experiences from way back when, the late 90s. Can't believe that's been that long ago, but it has. And members that have just gotten into the, Kyle Miller got up today to talk about, to talk about how these veteran members from both sides of the aisle will work with new members from both sides of the aisle, and just kind of give them some pointers, tips, and things like that on either how to get a bill passed or where the restroom is or the cafeteria, things like that. Important things.
Sure. It's what sucks about this process is that if you get beat, you don't get anything. Yeah. Which the Senate brings their folks back.
I noticed that.
The Senate brings their folks back.
Noticed that.
But if unfortunately
Mayor
this
Melton
fall,
came back.
if I get beat in the fall, I will not have a moment where people say nice things about me. Instead, I will literally just have people having said very mean things about me.
And I'll have to get a new co-host.
That's right. You will. You will have literally gone from a guest to a host to the sole host.
Exactly.
And
By the
all
way,
of these assets I will have lost.
I brought your resolution.
for that defeat.
We can do it now.
Yeah, you guys. Yeah, just go ahead. Say some nice things about me. I'd like that very much.
You have a nice suit.
Well, thanks. It's really deep.
Your wife is really cool.
Really deep. Yes, she is. She is very, very. That's
Hopefully
right.
that gives send you some brownie points.
She doesn't listen. Okay. She doesn't listen to the show. There's nothing we can do about that.
You know, one of the things about this is sometimes people think the R's and the D's don't get along and there aren't relationships across the aisle. One of the things we see when people get up and speak about the person that's retiring is you get great stories. And it doesn't matter if you're an R and D. It's not like it's only R's get up when it's an R person or D's get up. But there's great storytelling and really shows a lot of camaraderie that crosses over the aisles.
For sure. You know, I think when you look, for example, the size of the committees, 13 members. Ways and Means, I know, have a little bit more. So there's obviously this sort of this intimate group that works together. We're seeing that right now on the roads, which you both are on, the roads committee with regards to Senate Bill 52, the blue line. So it's easy, very easy to then, when you're in a committee of that small, intimate setting, to become friends with folks because you start to work with them. And you know, compared to Washington, D.C., the committees are so large and everyone's spread out. You know, last year I went out to the Biden State of the Union address, and I was actually invited by my Congressman, Representative Banks, and when we went out there, and he took me, of course, to the Republican Party, the function right before the speech.
Did an alarm go off when you walked through the door?
Well, no, there were some funny looks, but
how much liberalism do you have?
Stop being woke.
Exactly. But then he goes, and Banks says, well, I'll take you to the Democrat. I go, you mean you all don't get together? He goes, oh, no, never. And I thought, you got to be kidding me. I mean, we do so many things. We were together last night.
That tracks.
It does, exactly. So, probably just, we're a smaller group, and it just, I think, works out better. And I honestly, I do believe it makes for better legislation.
Well, and that's not to say we don't get ticked off. I mean, I'm deeply ticked off for the last 3 weeks on the blue line stuff. But that is interesting to me because even last night at Who's Your Idol, I mean, my table, I was sitting next to Senator Crider, Republican, right? And then so obviously some Democrats table, but we are always, the receptions, the things that we attend throughout the year to build camaraderie are almost always bipartisan. I mean, I can't think of a single major event that was just for one caucus or the other. I mean, we have dinners and whatever.
The smaller stuff. We had a South Shore Visitors and Convention thing earlier this week, and it was a combination of Democrat and Republicans there. So even the smaller events, you still get that mixture.
Yeah.
So it's too bad that doesn't happen in Washington.
Well, and then we sine die, and then I'm only around Democrats ever. I mean, that's all I see, right? So it's
But you probably bring up a pretty good point. We do get a break from each other.
Sure.
And then we come back next January. See, maybe that.
Well,
we're in D.C. They're always around each other. I don't know.
On the final episode of this, I got a bottle of champagne getting away from Earl. That's that's what I know.
I'll have some lemonade.
Oh, that's right. Mix it. No big deal. That's like a source soda or a mimosa or something.
There you go. We'll mix it up. All right. So let's transition to, and you kind of segued a little bit into this, Senate Bill 52.
Sure.
Which we're going to look at, and I'm going to kind of preface or preview something in not Indianapolis, but yet all of us are involved in this bill that really is only about Indianapolis. It has to do with the dedicated lanes in terms of busing. Can you give us an update on what's happening with that?
Well, I think you're specifically mentioning Senate Bill 52, but there's also another theme here, and that is, it seems like the Indiana General Assembly becoming one big city council meeting. I was able to tune in a little bit and watch some of that meeting, and it was giving me flashbacks to the days my brother Mark was on Fort Wayne City Council in the 80s and 90s, and I would watch the city council meetings. And it's the same type of questions that you were getting in the roads meeting that you would get at a city council meeting. What is going on here? This doesn't make sense. So, and I know Blake has more history with this bill than I do. But when we talk about local control or talk about government that's closest to the people works, but they had a referendum that passed, and now we're telling them, sorry, that doesn't matter. Or the city councils, or they do these things, whether they want to pass a local income tax or whatever the issue is that they want to do for their own community, and then a legislator who's a rep or senator, in this case a senator, wants to undo all that. Correct. And it's really, it's bad government, and it in my opinion, look, I'm Fort Wayne, you're East Chicago, but let's be honest, Indianapolis is the economic engine that drives the economy for the state of Indiana. We're very proud of our communities, but we really should all be rooting and pulling for the city of Indianapolis.
Capital.
The state. It's a state capital. It's the convention business is incredible. It's a great city, and we just want it. You and I, along with, of course, Representative Blake, who represents the area, just wants it to keep growing, improving, and this is just one bill, one step that will go to help do that.
Yeah, this what's so wild about this bill is everything you guys have mentioned, but we're also talking about $150 million of federal funds on the line. So, it's interesting to me that the Conservative Party is the one that's saying, well, we need big government to intervene on phase 3 of a major public works project. And at the same time, we'd actually rather that federal funds go to Ohio, Illinois, Michigan, and Kentucky than Indiana. Yeah. I mean, that's a weird position to be in. And it's why I think there's so much... It's just it's disillusioning almost that we're actually having the conversation. A couple things I'll say really quickly. 2014, state of Indiana passes a law, it's an enrolled act, to give Marion County the ability to raise taxes for mass transit. Mm-hmm. So then that's what we do. A few years later, we actually have a referendum. 60% of people vote for it. The whole plan is 3 BRT lines, red, purple, blue. And right now we're 2/3 of the way through this. Red and purple are in progress, if not done. And then blue is the final phase. And now we're going to start meddling with it. So, I don't think this is a foregone conclusion. I don't think that this is hopeless. I think there is a chance to still beat this thing, but it's going to take a lot of work in the final 10 to 12 days that we've got. And the committee, I'm grateful for the people I serve on that committee with. I think our line of questioning was excellent. Our coordination was excellent. The testimony was excellent. It was a lot of neighborhood groups, which is what I was used to on the city council.
95% were against this bill.
Well, and I think it was interesting too is I was on the city council in 2016 when we were having these conversations about the referendum. I was on the council. So was my colleague Senator Freeman. And so things are interesting, but we're going to keep fighting. And I think our team is burning the midnight oil on it, which is why over the course of episode 1 to 5 I've aged 10 years, which is perfectly fine, I suppose. But
well, and again, it was a great showing of people who were talking about why this bill is a bad idea, that live, work, etc. So, when you look at the committee or the testimonies in the committee, it really gave a great sign of what the community wants. There were very little people who spoke in favor of it. And then you read the script, so thank you for that, pointing out the fact that you're Indianapolis, we're not Indianapolis. As I talked about in committee is, why am I doing something and related to something that the people who live in Indianapolis, who represent Indianapolis, have already decided on? Those of us that live outside should not be engaging in that local thing.
At its current place, too, the bill affects you guys, though. It's saying no dedicated lanes in transit across the entire state. Now, the chairman did consistently, when someone from Fort Wayne or Purdue or somewhere would come up, he'd say, well, what if we just make it about Indianapolis? And their answer was great. They said, well, I think I'd still be against it because what you're saying to the federal government is Indiana's not a safe place to make investments because you guys could be 2/3 of the way through a project and then you're going to start messing with it. Really, really compelling stuff. Actually, the most compelling testimony is from an 8th grader who got up and said, I don't understand why a bunch of people who don't live in my community are making decisions for my community. And the chairman looked at him and said, I don't think I have an answer to that. It really has been fascinating. The one other thing I think I should say, just because I know our listeners are policy wonks and really diving deep and probably watched the entire hearing, the entire 3.5-hour hearing or whatever it was. But there's also a constitutional argument here, right? There is Article 4, Section 22 of the Indiana Constitution says that we shall not pass any laws that lay out our roadways, right? And this is a bill about determining what kind of lanes exist. So our argument's so strong on all levels, and then plus, I think on its face, the bill's unconstitutional too. So we will see what happens when it's all said and done.
And I want to add something. You just mentioned that we would lose $150 million.
Yes.
We also have to take into account that about $14 million has already been spent in preparation for this.
Yeah,
so it's really a bigger hit.
Yeah, we are down the road for sure, no pun intended. It is truly wild. So, and that's great. The hearing is next Tuesday, and we'll kind of have a better idea of where we're at. That's why I think when we all leave here, I'm going to go home and rest for 2 days and be ready for a fight come next week.
Well, we have to drive. Sorry, we don't
exactly.
That's right.
One last thing I'll add. Sure. I know it's buses versus trains, but I think you can talk about what's been happening up in your region with the trains that's going on, and the economic development impact that's going to have to Northwest and even North Central Indiana. And it's going to be, it has been already.
Yeah.
It's going to continue to be awesome for the region.
And that was one of the things I brought up is when you look at, and not to take a shot at these two gentlemen, but when you look at the chairman, Chairman Pressel, and then also chairman in the committee, Soliday, who's from Northwest Indiana, they were great leaders in terms of getting us the trains, the double tracking, and the West Lane corridor that we have. This is a similar situation of let's guide this, let's help this, but let's not get in the way of the locals, and let's also make sure we do what we can to get federal funds to come in. So we as an area of Northwest Indiana, or we as a state of Indiana, we're not footing that whole bill. We did what we had to do to get federal funds to come in. Right. And this is a similar situation. Let's not blow that.
Can you imagine going, no thanks, federal
I don't
government.
want that.
We'll risk not getting any money from you because we don't like the color of this track, right? Like, I mean, it's just a wild thing. So, another bill that's I think getting some attention is SB1. I mean, Earl, do you want to kick it off on SB1 and explain what's going on with that bill?
So we just talked about this in Ways and Means, and this has to do with, and this is one of the bills we knew was going to get a little contentious, and it has to do with reading skills and really retention in terms of third grade students. So in education, you spend your first few years learning to read, and then you make that transition at third grade from going into learning to read to reading to learn. And so this bill would actually...
Did you make that up just now? Because that sounds great.
Thank you. I did. It was right off the top of my head.
You are. I like it.
I can read and think. So what this would do is it would retain thousands and thousands of students in the state of Indiana. And when you look at some of the things related to retention, there's a lot of bad stuff that comes out of that. A student that is retained, their likelihood of graduating high school drops by about 50%. If they're retained a second time, it drops to pretty much nothing. You're not going to graduate most likely. You also get into some self-esteem issues, and you get into bullying. So if I'm retained, I'm now the big kid in class. Do I become a bully, or do I get bullied because I am retained and I'm the, you're that's not smart? There's other words I can use, but I won't use.
Sure.
Kid in class. So there's been a lot of science and study about this. And then you get into the financial part about this. So, we had some good conversation. And what was interesting was there was actually an amendment in Ways and Means that was spoken by a Republican, that the amendment was to take retention out. And it was pulled by the chairman because it was actually officially his amendment, but the other representative was the one who presented it. And what you heard was it was bipartisan. It's not just us Democrats who are saying, let's take retention away. Let's just focus on getting students where they need to be. There were multiple Republicans that are in the same lane as we are. So it's good to know that it's not just a Democrat side that don't want to hold back your kids.
Just a finer point on this, and by retention, we're talking about like failure to pass a reading assessment at the third grade would automatically result in your retention, which is a blunt force like kind of tool versus a precision, like a more precise look at how do we ensure these kids can read moving forward. So, I mean, Mr. Leader, this has obviously been a big issue. It's kind of percolated throughout the entire session. What are your kind of thoughts on it?
Well, I get asked from time to time now, test scores and reading test scores, all these things that the state of education has kind of kept going down, starting in about 2012. And I think to myself, what happened around that time? Oh, yeah, that's when the Republicans basically took control of all of state government, including, obviously, the House. So let's put blame where it should go. So we're in this mess right now because of the policies put forth and put in place by House Republicans and Senate Republicans, and frankly, championed by the last almost 20 years now of Republican governors. I've always maintained, we're talking about these retention issues and these tests taking a second and third grade, where if we would just think about what can we do sort of, kind of on the front end to help with the back end, and that means a more robust pre-K program, full day kindergarten, all these type of things that we should be funding much more than we are. We should be dedicating more resources to the front end of the issues with kids earlier in their ages, earlier in school, instead of just kind of figuring out putting these Band-Aids and these such things on these test scores. I know there are some things in the bill that we probably would agree with now I haven't seen any dollars with regards to how much for summer school and these sorts of things. But I agree with you, Representative Harris, that we've also seen a lot of data that says holding kids back really it's not the answer, because it really hurts going forward in the long run, and it's just bad for kids. So again, what are we doing? I have had some suggestions from teachers and superintendents that we start even earlier. I think this is, whether it's first grade, and start getting them more prepared and ready for these tests down the road in second and third grade, and that's probably something that really needs to happen.
And it's a 37-page bill, right? So I mean, there are good things in that bill, right? Yeah. However, this is the thing that is that stands out, which is I think why there was conversation about pulling it out. Also, you think about the cost of summer school, right? So we're going to say a whole lot more kids are going to go into summer school without more funding to grow summer school programs. So what's that do? You put all these little kids, elementary school kids, into summer school. How do schools actually operationalize that? I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, part of the solution is, so we spend, as I have my notes here correctly, $18 million on summer school. And I actually did not know this, but most of those students are actually health and physical ed students that don't want to take gym during the school year, and so they take it during the summer. So what we're looking at doing is bumping those students and having more of the students that would do summer school for reading. So it's going to cause some students some disruption in how they want to do things. The other thing I want to talk about is we just implemented, I believe last year, the science of reading. So that's new. If you guys remember that?
Yeah.
So we're not even a year into that, right. And we're going to talk about retaining students. And that was something that Representative Path brought up, and she is an educator, so she knows, she has background on this. Why are we making this drastic jump when we haven't even given the thing we implemented last year enough time to even be effective? Let's give it time and see what happens, and then make some decisions down the line.
We are oftentimes, I think, in education policy in this state, a dog with squirrels everywhere. And we are just like, oh man, look, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? And here's the one thing that really is good at the macro level about the conversation, at least, is finally the state is going, yes, we have a literacy crisis. Yes, there is a crisis when it comes to our people being able to read. That is a noble and just cause to undertake. Yeah. This just feels like a really inelegant and inaccurate way to deal with it.
True. I think the other flashing red light here is, what is the involvement in parents? Are they going to have any say, and whether or not their kid is retained or not? I think there's a couple of exceptions maybe, but by and large, I don't think there's going to be a lot of decisions there of the parent to decide, whether my kid gets held back or not.
Well, it'll be on seconds on the floor next week, so I'm sure we'll have a lot of amendments that we can see what we can do and see if we can make this bill not so damaging, or if it just goes away. We'll see what happens. All right, we are coming close to the end of our time. We talked about how you are the leader of the House Democrats. Tell us, what does that role mean?
Aside from the fact that when you enter the room, we all have to stand. I mean, other than we don't need to talk about that part, because it's becoming cardiovascularly difficult towards the end of session to continue doing that.
I heard a rumor there may be some bowing involved.
Yeah, so it is wild.
None of that, I will tell you.
Did he just call us liars?
On our own show.
On our own show. Jeez.
There's a lot to the job. I have to admit, I honestly thought I knew everything about it, but that's certainly not the case. So there's the legislative part of it, obviously, which is what most people think of the position. So, and setting forth an agenda, thinking about amendments that we can put up on the floor, the whole strategy with surrounding messaging and things, which you two are great in assisting with. There's the staffing, the human resources part of it, which I'm not as involved in as much. We have chief of staff who takes care of that. So you have the hiring of staff and things like that. Obviously, when we leave here, we're in campaign mode. So there's always a constant recruitment of new candidates that we want to run. Fundraising is nonstop. I mean, there's all these things, and I can't do it alone, obviously. So many of you all, you two included, and folks that help, with me on all these things. And but it's a tough position, tough job, I will tell you. And but I enjoy it. I like doing it. Who knows how long, but I do enjoy it, and I think the caucus does a really nice job. I've been very proud of the members, not only the bills that they file, the bills that they've gotten through, the arguments that we put up on the floor. I think they're all very engaged. I like the way that, frankly, they work with the other side. That is something that I had to learn to do when I first got here as a member in the majority, but with only 51 and 52. If you wanted a bill to get passed, you better have a Republican on your bill. You better have some support, because you may lose one or two on your own from your own caucus. So there's a lot to it. We obviously have some fun caucus meetings from time to time. I encourage open discussion and dialogue. We from time to time, we may as a caucus say, hey, let's stick together on this one. There's some strategic reasons for that. But we also know
we did that for the lemonade stand bill, which I really appreciated. Yeah.
Well, but we do have members that come from different parts of the state, have different ideas and things like that, so we can kind of sometimes get all over the map on some things too.
I'm sorry, I cut you off at the end there. The most important thing I heard him say is you and I are good at messaging. I'm thinking TikTok and Instagram Reel videos.
Yeah, that's where I'm going to cut 45 different videos of Phil from this episode just to use throughout the county and everything, so everyone knows he's a big fan of the Blue Line, helping us out here. So I know we're gonna wrap up here, but some stuff interesting happened today. We talked about peeling back the curtain and how things work and the rules and all that stuff. Former rules ranking member Phil GiaQuinta, but today we had two things happen. We filed a minority report. Could you explain that really quickly? So kind of give everybody what happens with the committee reports generally, and then what today was.
A committee report is a report that after the committees, after they voted out, we on the floor have to adopt it. And the speaker usually rattles off 15, 20 committee reports, and we adopt them
en masse.
Yes.
If you would like to do a minority committee report, basically you're submitting your own. It has to be someone who was on the committee and they voted no on the bill. And this has to do with Senate Bill 202. We've got, frankly, on all bills, we have some members that are a little more passionate than others on some of these things. We have a couple of three, I guess, professors, members that are professors at different universities, including Representative Pierce from Bloomington. And we talked a little bit yesterday about presenting our own minority report, and Representative Delaney had to do the work because he was one of those that voted no in committee, and he qualified to do that. So he presented the report. We discussed it. It did not get in, not that we were expecting it to. We don't do it from very often, but from time to time when we want to make a statement and feel very passionate about something, we'll do that.
Yeah, and what's interesting too is that obviously failed, right? I mean, it's a harsh word, but it is what it is. Like we make our fight, we get the vote, and then after that happened, we used another rule to try to motion the bill to be recommitted to another committee to kind of slow it down again. And so what's interesting about this is we have these steps that we can do to try to fight back. And then also part of that strategy is you're also kind of just jamming them up. They really wanted to start the retirement resolution today. And we got to fight a little bit and push back. And it's one of the tools the minority has at their disposal. Any closing thoughts on that piece of it?
No, I mean, there's obviously several bills that are controversial. This is one. You mentioned the other one, the lemonade stand.
Yeah.
So,
it's a little tart.
Exactly. So you're right. From time to time, we want to show folks that we're out fighting for them on these highly contentious issues, and this was one way to do it. And I thought it was fun. I think it's kind of fun. I think it shows folks out there that we're again fighting for them, and we're just asleep at the wheel, and we're going to keep doing stuff.
Use every tool at our disposal.
Yeah. Well, and that's really what the minority party. That's what the tools are for. Yeah. And that's what the minority party should do, and we'll keep doing that.
Well, a little joke about messaging there a minute ago, but that really is also part of messaging and giving us an opportunity to talk even more about the bill and about issues that it will cause. So
well, and you mentioned about recommitting it to Ways and Means. That in itself is its own story because we know that there are other things that we would like to do, that we would like to be able to spend money on, but have been told it's not a budget year, so you can't do that. And so this is going to have a fiscal, and yet we're not really talking about that. And so which one is it? So I'm glad that we tried to do that as well. It failed, but it gave us another argument to put forth.
Well, we have no idea how long this episode currently is, so we probably should wrap it up. No clock in the room today, so we're just kind of guessing. But Phil, thanks for coming on. Thanks for your leadership. Thanks for captaining the ship in stormy seas and in calm as well. And we're obviously grateful for it. And thanks everybody for sticking with us on another run of time here with Sessions. Earl continues to try to find ways to get rid of me, and we're going to just keep going for 10 more days. We probably get one more episode in here. So
there's a bill or resolution I'm going to get passed about you before we finish.
No, I assume it's going to seek that I sine die. I'm
thinking Sheila Clinker, my next co-host.
Listen, you do you, brother. You do you. But we will be back next week for probably we probably not next week. Maybe just have a final episode to close everything out. When the next 10 days are up, we'll give you a recap of how things ended. But for now, I know you got to drive to Fort Wayne. You got to drive to East Chicago. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you next time.